I never imagined I'd find love in a place of despair until a quiet stranger came to set me free. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The shadows in the hospital were darker than any fear I had ever known. Heartbeats echoed against sterile walls, slow, thick, like molasses. My mom's eyes, once filled with life, now trembled with tears, reflecting my own silent scream. I felt trapped inside a nightmare, bound by the weight of unanswered questions. Last week, I was standing by her bedside, praying against the odds. But that day, the doctor's words sliced through my hopes like a knife to fabric. "We've done all we can." I could hardly breathe. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage, desperate for a way out. The world outside spun on as if nothing mattered, but in that room, time stood still. I glanced around, taking in the sterile smell, the humming machines. I could have sworn I saw shadows flickering at the corners of my vision. I shivered. It felt like the very walls were watching, holding secrets of their own. My fingers trembled as they gripped the metal frame of the bed, cold as my dread. I could hear the beeps and sighs, the symphony of despair and fading hope. Nothing felt real anymore. Then, from the corner of my eye, he appeared. A stranger, pale and quieto whisper in a world of screams. His face was gaunt, eyes deep with unspoken stories. He sat in the shadows, something about him drawing me in. As our gazes caught, an electric pulse shot through me, as if he carried a secret that could unlock the door to my heart's devastation. I glanced away quickly, desperate to unravel my own turmoil before diving into his. Every so often, I looked back, curious. He seemed untouched by the horror surrounding us, sitting still as a statue, observing the chaos. I wanted to scream loudly, to drown out the silence around me. Who was he? What had brought him here? My heart ached, the weight of my grief laying heavy in my chest. And then, just as the doctor entered the room, that quiet stranger stood, gliding across the floor like a ghost. He approached my mom's bed, his soft touch brushing against her frail hand. The room spun, the air thickened, and everything shifted. "You can find freedom," he whispered, his voice low and smooth, filled with a knowing that sent chills through me. Freedom? I didn't understand. My mother was slipping away. How could he speak of freedom? A lump formed in my throat. I wanted to scream for him to leave, to take my pain and despair with him. But there was a strange comfort in his gaze, a promise wrapped in layers of mystery. And just like that, he turned to me, his eyes piercing into my soul. "It's not too late," he said, and a shiver ran down my spine. My heart raced. What did he know? The questions piled up, suffocating me in their urgency. How could he possibly bring hope in a place drenched in despair? But the doctor cleared his throat, my mom stirred, and suddenly everything felt real again. Could I trust this stranger? As his form faded into the shadows, I felt an ache, a hollow space shaped by the possibility of what could be and what was about to break. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I lingered on the cusp of despair, teetering between the inescapable reality that my mother was fading and the whisper of hope entangled in the stranger's words. The sterile smell of antiseptic gripped my senses tightly as I clenched my teeth to keep the tears from spilling over. I needed to be strong for her, even when every part of my being screamed for release from this nightmare. Days blurred together, each one a haunting echo of the last, as I paced the cold hospital floor. My mom fought bravely against her illness, but I could see the darkness creeping into her features, stealing the light from her once vibrant spirit. I barely slept, drawn back constantly to the lingering memory of that stranger's piercing gaze. "It's not too late." Those words replayed in my mind, like a song that refused to fade. Later that week, I found myself wandering the hospital's labyrinthine corridor, yearning to escape into the world outside where laughter and sunlight thrived. But as I turned a corner, I stumbled upon him again, sitting on a bench in the waiting area, his fingers tracing patterns on his worn-out jeans. The sight of him felt unsettling, yet strangely comforting. "What are you doing here?" I asked, the question tumbling out before I could reel it back in. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features, but behind that lay an understanding that made my heart flutter. "I could ask you the same," he replied softly. "We're both here for someone we love. It connects us, doesn't it?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that this bond forged in grief was not one I wished for. But in his presence, my defenses crumbled. There was an undeniable pull toward his tranquility amid chaos. "Why did you say it's not too late?" I pressed, yearning for clarity. "Because hope can defy death," he said, his voice a mere echo of the certainty that seemed to radiate from him. "It can linger in the cracks, even in unexpected places. Your mother still has dreams, and sometimes holding on to those can keep the light alive." His words resonated like a gentle lullaby, igniting something deep within me. The notion that my mom could be freed from this torment began to sprout new life, a possibility fluttering within the confines of my despair. Just then, a nurse walked by, checking on other patients, bringing with her an unexpected reminder of humanity. She smiled, a soft, genuine smile that sparked a flicker of warmth amidst the cold clinical air. "Would you like some coffee?" he offered, breaking my reverie. The small gesture seemed monumental, as if he were offering me a lifeline. "Sure," I answered, almost shyly. As we stood in line at the hospital cafe, we fell into conversation, sharing fragments of ourselves that felt essential yet vulnerable. He introduced himself as Eli. Life had taken a harsh toll on him, too. He was here for his sister, battling her own demons. The way he spoke about her ignited a fierce passion in his voice, a reminder that love persisted, even in dark places. However, beneath that connection lingered an unspoken tension, electrified by both our shared grief and a yearning for something beyond it. Our laughter felt like the first hint of dawn scattering the night around us. Then came the moment that shattered the delicate bond between us. I let slip a casual inquiry about his sister, expecting fragmented stories of hope and resilience. Instead, his demeanor shifted, shadows cutting across his features as he faltered, stricken by sorrow. "She's not going to make it," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, the raw pain etched deeply into his words. "And I can't stop it. I came here thinking I could save her, but—" His voice broke, and my heart echoed his suffering, aching to reach out to him, to comfort him, yet feeling entirely powerless. We stood in silence, the cafe buzzing around us, oblivious to the storm that brewed just beyond our skin. I caught a glimpse of his struggle reflected through my own, understanding that our hearts were both brushing against the precipice of despair. But a new dawn was emerging. We could either fall together into despair or clasp hands and search for that flickering Hopian ember refusing to die. Just as my thoughts began to spiral into uncertainty, my phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me from the reverie. The message from the hospital sent icy dread crashing into my bones. "Emergency situation with your mother," it read, urgent and stark. My heart raced, a wild beat echoing the terror of that thought. "I have to go," I said, the tether between Eli and I fraying under the weight of reality. He reached for my hand, grounding me momentarily. "You'll find your way back," he said, his voice unwavering. The truth behind it shimmered like a fleeting light, but I couldn't afford to linger. I dashed toward the elevator. Uncertainty clawed at my heart. And when the doors closed behind me, sealing me away from Eli, I was left with the disquieting sense that both our stories were about to collide in ways none of us could anticipate. The elevator banged to a halt on the 5th floor, the panic chill of the sudden stop slicing through the fog of my mind. The hallway stretched endlessly before me, the fluorescent lights overhead humming like a distant storm. Each step felt heavy, as if the weight of my mother's condition clung to my body, pulling me back. My breath came in ragged bursts, the urgency of my message clawing at my insides. I rounded a corner and collided with a nurse wielding a clipboard. "Excuse me." My voice came out in a rush, desperate for clarity. "What happened?" "It's my mom." The nurse's expression shifted, a flash of empathy mingled with something more sorrowful. "I'm sorry, honey. Your mother had a setback. They're working on stabilizing her right now." Her words stung, pulling the ground from beneath me. I forced my legs to remain steady, But my mind whirled with so many questions. Could she be saved? Why hadn't I been there? Can I see her? I pressed, needing to hear her voice, to remind myself that she still existed beyond the sterile walls and pitching whispers of uncertainty. Just a moment, the nurse said gently, before disappearing behind double doors. The air thickened with the weight of waiting. I paced, feeling like an imposter in a world that seemed to twist and turn while I stood still in fear. At that moment, the hospital felt like a cruel labyrinth, designed to stretch hope as thin as possible while remaining painfully close to despair. But then, just as weakness threatened to seep into my bones, I saw the familiar rushing figure of another nurse, Amanda, who had been with us through my mother's journey. Her gentle smile had been a beacon on many dark days. "Emma," she called, rushing over. "I'm glad you're here. They're working on her now, and she's still fighting." Her tone was the softest promise, brushing against my raw hopes. But the reality was taut between us. "What does that mean?" I asked, trembling with pent-up fear. "Is she?" "Not yet. But we need to prepare you for the next steps," Amanda said carefully, a soft sadness flickering in her eyes. "She may not be able to express her wishes soon, and we want to make sure we honor what she wants." I felt the ground shift beneath me again, uncertainty spiraling into a vortex of helplessness. "But she can't leave me," I whispered. "Not now. Not when there's still so much." "Emma," Amanda interrupted, her voice steady and calming. "It's okay to feel angry, scared, and even hopeless. Remember to talk to her. Let her feel your presence." I nodded, although doubt gnawed at my resolve. Engaging with the reality of my mother's mortality felt insurmountable, each second a knife drawn deeper into my soul. "I don't know if I can," I confessed, tears crowning my lashes. "That's what we're here for," Amanda said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone in this." Just then, the doors swung open again, and two doctors emerged with somber expressions etched across their faces. My heart plummeted, crashing into the pit of my stomach. I could hardly breathe. "We need to talk to you," one of them said. My pulse quickened, every nerve on fire as I steeled myself for whatever news lay ahead. "I ask she?" I began, my voice thick with dread. "Your mother's condition is serious, and we need to discuss her wishes regarding comfort care," the second doctor said, his gaze piercing yet soft. "She's conscious and aware now, which is important. We'd like you to speak with her." "Would you like that?" I wavered, torn between terror and the desperate hope that saying goodbye was not the only option. "Is it really time?" I asked, unable to mask the quiver in my voice. "We're not here to take away hope," he reassured, "but we're focused on providing the best quality of life for her." As they guided me through the double doors, I could hear the faint beeping of machines, each sound a grim reminder of how delicate the boundaries between life and death had become. I entered the room, and there she was, my mother, frail yet still radiating the warmth that had always enveloped me. Her eyes flickered open, illuminating everything around her. "Emma," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. But it was her voice, and the sound infused me with courage I didn't know I had. "Hey, Mom," I said, stepping closer, clutching the small, cool hand that had always comforted me as a child. "I don't know what's happening, but I'm here. I love you." I searched her face, looking for the woman who had held me through storms, but the lines etched deep had begun to shadow her spirit. Yet in those eyes, I caught sparks of recognition, moments when she was still the person I adored. I spoke, pouring my heart into every word. Pulling up memories of picnics and laughter, I noticed her little breaths grow steadier, the desperate rawness of her situation beginning to retreat. For a flicker of a moment, the tension eased, and I dared to believe that my love could weave through the darkness surrounding her, stitching hope back together. And then, from the corner of the room, a shadow caught my eye. Eli stood there, his presence both surprising and comforting. I looked up at him, our eyes locked in a moment that felt sacred, understanding the journey we both traveled, riding the thin edge of light and shadow. "Your love is strong," he spoke softly, the sincerity of his words imbued with depth, transcending the reality around us. Just as the fragile moment settled in the air like a shimmering breath, my mother's gaze shifted, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she were sensing something beyond Yuzin. That's when the alarm chimed, shrieking through the tense silence, drowning out everything. I looked back to see a flurry of activity as doctors rushed in, urgency pouring from every corner. "Mom," I cried, a fresh wave of fear crashing over me. As they worked frantically, Eli stepped forward, his hand resting gently on mine. "Stay strong, Emma," he murmured, but even his words felt distant amid the rising tide of panic. And in that moment, I realized this was no ordinary fight. The storm was far from over, and our lives were about to cross in ways neither of us had imagined. As the rush enveloped the room, a resounding sense of dread settled over me like a thick fog, and I wondered if my mother's fight would mark the beginning or end of my own. The beeping blared relentlessly, echoing in my ears like a funeral dirge. I stood frozen, helplessly watching as the doctors circled my mother, their faces set in determination and urgency. Time slowed, dragging each second into an agonizing span of dread. I couldn't help but feel as if the walls were closing in, suffocating the remnants of hope I had clung to moments before. "Stay back," one of the doctors called sharply, addressing Eli and me with an intensity that demanded compliance. My heart raced. All the love and warmth radiating from my mother just moments ago felt like a lifeline slipping through my fingers. Instinctively, I took a step closer, but Eli's hand tightened around my wrist, anchoring me in place. "Let them do their job," he whispered, his voice low but steady. "She's still fighting." But how could he say that? Each frantic movement in the room painted a different pictorial reality I struggled to accept. How could there be any fighting left if they seemed so desperate? I gritted my teeth, bracing myself against the rising tide of panic threatening to consume me. Keeping my eyes on my mother, I felt a sob claw its way up my throat as I caught glimpses of her frail body, the machines lighting up like angry beacons, relaying the grim news of her struggle. Despite the chaos, I could still find comfort in the soft rhythm of her breaths, each one a reminder that she was still here, that there was still a chance the doctors continued their work. Eli remained by my side, his presence a balm for the raw uncertainty. Just having him near felt like holding onto a flickering flame in the dark. I glanced over at him, catching his focused gaze, and the urgency of the situation transformed into an understanding without words. We were both desperate not to lose the ones we loved. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. Finally, the doctors retreated, leaving only one attending physician behind to monitor my mother's vitals. A charged silence fell, like the eerie calm before a storm. I searched the doctor's eyes for any hint, any glimmer of good news, but his expression remained neutral, creating an uncomfortable space full of anxiety. "Can I talk to her right now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, laced with fear. The doctor nodded, pulling back slightly to allow me access. "Just keep your voice calm, Emma. Encourage her. She needs to feel you," he said softly, retreating but keeping a watchful eye on my mother's frame. I took a deep breath as I slid into the chair beside her bed. The weight of the world rushed back in waves. "Mom," I said, gripping her hand even tighter, willing warmth back into it. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, the chaotic sounds of the hospital faded into the background. The connection between us felt almost palpably an invisible thread tethering our souls. "Emma," she croaked again, the sound like a gentle breeze brushing across my heart. "Yes, Mom. It's me. I love you," I whispered, willing her to know the depths of my affection, to feel it radiate across that sterile room. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do this. Please just hang on." As my mother stared into my eyes, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I saw recognition swimming in her gaze. There was something there, a flicker of light piercing through the fog of pain and fear. "Not time yet," she said, her voice barely a rasp, but the words cut through the tension with an undeniable force. Just then, I felt Eli shift beside me, drawing closer to my side. "Talk to her about the sun," he encouraged softly, and surprisingly, I could see he was right. My mother had always found solace under the vastness of the sky, her spirit intertwined with every sunrise and sunset she had ever cherished. "Mom," I began again, desperation edging my voice as I focused on the warmth within this safe memory. "Remember when we sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon? You said every sunset brings the promise of a new dawn, that this day will not be the end." Tears formed in my mother's eyes, shimmering like stars gathering on a night sky. Hold on to that belief, sweetheart, she murmured, each word a rafter of hope patched into our reality. Suddenly, Eli squeezed my hand even tighter, a gentle but insistent presence. Remember, this is about her fight, her wishes, Emma. She believes in you. Let her feel your strength. For a heartbeat, I felt the weight lifting, buoyed by a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. But that reprieve shattered as I noticed the doctor across the room, his demeanor shifting as he squinted at the monitor, eyes widening. Call for assistance, he shouted suddenly, and the panic surged back, drowning me in turbulence. Mom, I cried out, my heart hammering against ribs that felt far too constricted, the words chipping at my throat as I leaned toward her. Stay with me, please. You promised. But the alarms wailed again, a relentless reminder of how precariously balanced upon that razor's edge we all were. And just as I felt myself teetering into despair, Eli leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. You can't give up hope, Emma. She needs you now more than ever. As the room erupted with movement yet again, I sensed the imminent need to protect what little time we had left. But looming in the back of my mind was an unsettling thought: what if this moment was the beginning of an unforeseen journey, both for us and the fragile love that lingered under the weight of overwhelming uncertainty? And just as I braced for a lifeline to pull me through that chaos, a sudden shift in the energy of the room changed everything. Beneath the chaos swirled a change, a sharp message shadowed in a new truth. The hidden complexities of love, life, and loss merged, revealing a secret I had not prepared to handle. Just then, I turned to Eli, catching his steady gaze, only to see enough pain mirrored there to drown me. Whatever lay ahead in this hospital of despair, twists of fate awaited that would alter everything I had ever known. The staccato of footsteps marched on, filling the sterile air with an urgency that mirrored the pounding in my chest. I was acutely aware of the chaos surrounding us, like a distant storm brewing on the horizon, but now it felt as if even the very essence of time itself was weighing down on me, urging me toward an all-consuming fate. Each second stretched like a fragile thread, whispering promises of both despair and hope, a tantalizing dance that invited me to wade into deeper waters. Eli kept his hand locked with mine, grounding me, anchoring me to reality. I could hear the doctor's calling command sharp enough to cut through the fog in my mind. And then, abruptly, the shrill beeping of the machines transformed into something more ominous, a cacophony, reflecting my mom's new battle against the odds. Get the crash cart, someone yelled from across the room, and I felt the floor sway beneath me as if the ground itself was on the brink of crumbling. I turned my attention back to my mother, her features suddenly slack, a surreal contrast to the animated spirit I had known. Panic gripped my insides, clawing viciously at my heart. Mom, I shouted desperately, as if my voice could penetrate the walls of uncertainty closing in around us. The moment felt stretched, a taut bowstring ready to snap. My heart raced. This was no time for weakness. Emma, breathe, Eli urged, his voice a steady anchor in the hydra of emotions circling me. Just breathe. I took a shaky inhale, the sharp tang of antiseptic filling my lungs. I focused on my mother. I needed her to know that I would not let go. With each frantic beat of my heart, fragments of memories flashed in the corners of my mind, her laughter echoing through the house, her gentle touch soothing away fears, the warmth radiating from her arms. I needed to share them. I needed her to hear me. She needed to fight for this. Mom, I finally managed, my voice trembling. Remember our secret spot by the lake? The way the water sparkled like diamonds under the sun? You taught me that beauty exists even in the darkest places. The words flowed from me like a lifeline. Ella's thumb brushed across the back of my hand, and in that fleeting gesture, he reflected the enormity of our shared love, a quiet promise tucked away in the heart of chaos. I looked into his eyes, finding unexpected comfort in the depths of his compassion. But just then, a sudden, echoing alarm cut through the air, a siren's call that froze my breath. Doctors swarmed around my mother, their hands moving deftly as they called for measures that hung in the air like daggers poised to fall. My anxiety burgeoned, threatening to pull me under. Eli's grip tight on my hand, grounding me once more. Stay with her, Emma. You are her strength. The room pulsed with energy, the panic of impending loss reflected back through every face. Just then, a voice rang out through the noise, sharp and commanding. We need to stabilize her now. Prepping for intubation. Intubation? I echoed, and the word sent chills cascading down my spine. The reality of what was happening felt like a sickening twist of fate, a cruel deception playing out before me. No, please, I can't lose her. Eli turned to me, and his expression was soft yet filled with a determination that both terrified and comforted me. Emma, if this is what it takes, don't say that. I cut him off, desperation almost drowning me. But in the depths of my despair, Eli leaned closer, his presence wrapping around me like armor. Whatever happens, you need to believe. Your mom is fighting. This isn't over. My gaze traveled back to my mother, her face pale against the crisp, white sheets. I could hardly recognize her. Where was the woman who once guided me through life's uncertainties? But as I watched, I noted flickering movements just beneath her skin, the strength within her fighting against all odds. I could almost hear the echoes of her voice in my heart, urging me onward. Believe, Emma. Believe in us. That I in your battles, Mom. I continued, feeling empowered yet fragile. You've always told me that the darkest moments come before a breakthrough. You taught me that even storms yield to sunlight eventually. Please, Mom, just hold on for us. A flicker of consciousness danced across her brow, an expression of recognition, however fleeting, as I dredged up the depths of our shared history, the music we danced to in the living room, the family dinners filled with laughter, the dreams we wove together. I could see it in her eyes, the fight igniting slowly but surely. But then, as if time conspired against us once more, an unexpected woman appeared in the threshold, a nurse with a soft face and tender eyes, her expression holding an unspoken understanding. Emma, she beckoned gently, and I felt drawn to her warmth, a comforting resonance amidst the chaos. Your mother has a history of allergies that we hadn't anticipated. We need to take immediate precautions, she said, addressing me directly, her voice steady but edged with urgency. Hope rose, flaring momentarily as she continued. Let's get her situated and stabilized. It's going to require some delicate work on our part, and your presence is needed. If you can stay by her side as we do this, I believe you can help. I nodded, uncertainty dancing alongside the flickers of newfound hope. The nurse's presence offered an unexpected solace, reminder that kindness and compassion still existed even in the darkest of places. But as the team shifted into action, I couldn't shake off an underlying anxiety. The weight of the unknown settled on my shoulders. Ella's hands tightened around mine, and I marveled at the strength of our bond, fragile, yet unwavering. Yet beneath the surface of everything that had transpired, I felt the pull of an inevitable truth lurking just beyond. Eli, I breathed as another wave of urgency filled the room. What if this is just the beginning? What if what we think we know changes everything? He met my gaze, his eyes reflecting the same mixture of hope and trepidation swirling within me. Just then, an unfamiliar voice echoed from the far end of the hallway, a voice I couldn't quite place, but one that sent a shiver of recognition down my spine. Is she in danger? I know her. The figure approached rapidly, and with it came the promise that everything we once held dear might unravel into something unspeakable, irrevocable. The woman blurred into focus, her features strikingly familiar, a storm cloud gathering in her chest. Before me stood someone who could disturb the delicate balance of our world forever. I simply hadn't seen it coming. The revelation loomed heavy, carrying with it the gravity that time had never prepared me to face. What lay ahead was still cloaked in uncertainty, but in that very moment, I understood. The heart is capable of more than we know, igniting courage amidst despair. And sometimes, strangers hold pieces of our journey long before they ever cross our paths. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting eerie shadows across the sterile walls, but my focus remained anchored on the woman advancing toward us. My heart raced as recognition surged within me. She looked so much like my mother, like an abandoned echo of a dream that had long slipped through my fingers. As she approached, determination saturated her features, but beneath it, I sensed a veil of pain that mirrored my own. Who are you? My voice trembled, slicing through the cacophony of medical jargon and urgent footsteps. I instinctively squeezed Ella's hand tighter, a lifeline to keep me from toppling into the unknown depths this stranger represented. The woman's breath came in quick, shallow bursts. Emma, wait. I'm not here to hurt you. I am your Aunt Sarah? A wave of confusion washed over me, cascading into a chasm of emotions I could barely fathom. Aunt, I echoed, the words souring on my tongue. How could this be? My mother had said nothing of a sister, nothing about family feuds that might have put distance between us. Yet, here she stood, a stranger with familiar eyes, the same vibrant green ID looked into it countless times as a child. Eli shifted beside me, uncertainty surging in his gaze. Emma, we need to focus on your mom right now. No. I snapped, the urgency in my voice drowning out the panic that lurked within me. She might be the key to understanding some part of my mother that I never knew. I can't just ignore this. Please, Sarah pleaded, her own voice quivering with despair. I came as soon as I heard. I've missed so much. I was too late for everything that mattered. In the swell of the moment, I felt the fragility of family connections, the ripples of choices made long before I could even grasp their implications. You could have reached out, I breathed, pain framing my words. I was scared, she admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We had a falling out years ago, and I never had the courage to go back. I heard she wasn't well, but I was afraid of what I'd find. I regret it every day. As the tension tightened in the air, I looked back at the bustling room where doctors were now hovering over my mother. A part of me wanted to retract into my fortress, to dismiss this woman who represented loss. Yet, another part, the part that still craved connection and clarity, yearned to understand her story. Stay, I finally managed, my voice dropping to a whisper as the weight of the decision settled around us. If she wakes up, she deserves to see you. She has questions, and maybe so do I. Sarah's expression brightened, the flicker of hope igniting a bond that had been severed for years. Thank you, Emma. I promise, I'll do everything I can for her. I could only nod, uncertain of whether to decipher her sincerity or where this new relationship might lead. The fear of my mother's condition still loomed large over USA's storm cloud, casting shadows over this moment of fragile hope. The tension in the room dissipated somewhat, melding with an intense stillness as we waited, hearts intertwined with an aching need for everything to change for the better. Ella's presence remained close, a reminder that love could flourish even amidst chaos, and somehow, that love remained tethered to our resilience. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the nurse's station. A cluster of bodies shifted like the chaotic marionette strings at play. My attention snapped to the sound, but I felt Sarah's steady hand on my arm, grounding me once again in this precarious reality. Let's not lose faith, she whispered, and though I wanted to embrace that sentiment, a cold grip of apprehension nestled into my bones. As minutes dripped by like hours, I watched the door swing open. My breath caught in my throat as a doctor emerged, wiping his hands on his scrubs, his expression inscrutable. Emma, he called, and every fiber of my being coiled in anticipation. Is she okay? I blurted, my pulse quickening. There were complications, he began, taking a moment to steady himself. We managed to stabilize her, but she is in critical condition. I need to discuss the next steps. There's a chance she may need more intensive care than we initially prepared for. An icy wave crashed over me, drowning the flickering flames of hope. More intensive care? I repeated, trying to grasp what this meant for my mother, for us. Yes, and we need to talk about treatment options. But first his eyes drifted toward the end of the corridor, where another nurse rushed in with an alarming expression. There's something else you should know. The words hung in the air like an ominous specter, a weight I hadn't been prepared for. My chest tightened, dread wrapping around my heart, as if in anticipation of the revelation that waited just beyond the tip of his tongue. Aunt Sarah? I glanced backward instinctively, needing her strength more than ever. She met my gaze with determined resolution, a silent promise shared between us, a shared fate that would intertwine our stories, no matter how bleak the horizon ahead might seem. But in that moment, the knock of fate resounded once more, a guttural unease quivering in my heart, signaling that things were about to shift irreparably. I think you should sit down for this, he said, and as dread slithered through me, I understood immediately that this encounter might very well alter the trajectory of our lives forever. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to the air, a constant reminder that we were trapped within the chaotic realm of suffering. I barely registered the hot tears that hovered at the edge of my eyelids, threatening to spill over. Instead, I focused intensely on the doctor, his words hanging in the atmosphere like a sword ready to drop. "I think you should sit down for this." The world narrowed around me, the corridor fading into a blur. I glanced at Eli, who stepped forward, concern etched across his features. He took my hand once more, his grip solid and anchoring. Then I turned to Sarah, searching for the reassurance she had just offered moments before. Yet her face paled, the shadows of worry eclipsing the flickers of hope. That we found a couple of chairs, and I sank into one, feeling as if the weight of the world was borrowing more than just my strength. It was demanding all of me. Sarah perched beside me, her words offering a desperate comfort. "Whatever it is, we will face it together. You're not alone." I nodded, trying to maintain that semblance of courage, but the doctor's silence stretched unnaturally, thickening the air around us. What could possibly be worse than critically ill? What secrets hid in the husky undertones of his voice? He took a deep breath, his gaze steadying on mine. "I need to tell you that we found something concerning during the procedure," he began, each word more crushing than the last. "Your mother has developed a secondary condition." No," I interrupted, panic rising like bile in my throat. My mother couldn't endure more turmoil. "What do you mean? What condition?" He hesitated, and I felt my heart plummet into the pit of my stomach. "There is a significant risk of pulmonary embolism. We discovered blood clots in her lungs." The reality of the situation shattered the illusions of hope I clung to. I could only breathe shallowly, fighting against the waves of despair crashing over me. "But you can treat that, right? You have to make her better. We're going to try our best, but there's no guarantee," he admitted, his voice measured yet heavy with empathy. "It's possible she may not respond well to treatment." I could only stare blankly, my mind reeling. This was too much to bear. First the critical condition, and now this. I felt the strength draining from my bones, a deep ache within me radiating outward like a chill creeping through the night air. Eli's voice broke through the fog. "We need to keep our heads clear. We'll gather all the information. We can figure this out together." I wanted to scream at him to stop with the rational words. I wanted to thrash against the silence that filled the room, the silence that echoed my own helplessness. Yet, Sarah's hand squeezed mine with such unexpected warmth that I found a flicker of steadiness amid this violent storm. "Let's talk to the doctor about options," she urged gently, and with a sharp inhale, I nodded that yes, we gathered ourselves. I felt a soft breeze flutter through the hallway, the lingering air mixing with a tentative promise of resilience. Just then, Eli eased closer to me, the warmth of his body wrapping around my soul like a warm blanket. "We'll figure this out as a family," he whispered, and part of me wanted to believe it. Minutes felt like hours as the doctor began discussing treatment plans, but the details blurred. Medications, procedures, risks, they all mashed together into a cacophony that left me feeling even more lost. Before I could pull myself out of this haze, I noticed someone standing at the edge of the corridor, watching us with a familiar apprehension in their eyes. That a girl around my age, maybe a year or two older, haunted by sorrow. I recognized her. She was in one of my mother's photographs, smiling brightly at a family picnic, radiating joy. She was my cousin, a piece of family I didn't know I had, lingering quietly in a realm of despair. "What are you doing here?" I managed to whisper, my heart racing despite my attempt to maintain composure. Her lips quivered slightly, and apprehension danced in her gaze. "I heard about Aunt Sarah and your mom." She stepped closer, uncertainty clouding her features. I wanted to know if I could help. That I looked at Sarah, who regarded me with a mix of surprise and newfound sorrowful understanding. Would this new cousin be a source of additional pain or an unexpected light amid our struggles? As the details of my mother's condition continued to swirl around me, the weight of family loss morphed into something I couldn't quite grasp, the fraying edges of connection, the bonds once severed. Would it be possible to forge something new even amid the chaos? Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the other end of the hallway. My heart lurched as another nurse rushed past us, her eyes troubled, whispering something frantically into the phone. My pulse quickened with dread. The doctor's gaze shifted sharply in that direction, followed by Eli, Sarah, and I, eyes widening in response. "What's going on?" I demanded, glancing back at the doctor, whose expression morphed into something stiff and unreadable. "They'll be right back," he said, his words terse before he darted down the corridor, leaving us behind a hole of uncertainty where hope had just begun to take root. With my heart pounding harder than before, I gripped Eli's hand tightly, feeling the tremors in my chest resonating together. Nothing felt steady anymore, and the weight of our shared existence hung heavily in the air. At that moment, a sense of urgency propelled my thoughts. What if I lost my mother? What other secrets did my family hold? The weight of revelations that had begun to surface only deepened the fears I already carried. As I turned back towards my cousin and Sarah, they looked at me with the same fearful anticipation. We were tethered now, a troubled web of shared histories, pain, and an unyielding desire to mend the shards of our lives. But as I stared into the unknown, I couldn't shake the feeling that fate was still at play, weaving its threads through our lives with a tender but ruthless hand, preparing to unveil the next chapter of our story whether we were ready or not. The sterile walls hummed softly, a reminder that life would march on outside, indifferent to grief. I tried to concentrate on the passing footsteps and muffled conversations, but each sound only amplified my sense of loneliness, a feeling I had not expected to wrestle with in a place that should have felt like home. The crash had faded, swallowed by the shadows of uncertainty. Eli still held my hand, a comforting weight amidst the turmoil, but suddenly, it felt insufficient. The silence of waiting became deafening, punctuated only by the soft beeping from the machines in the room where my mother lay. I couldn't help but imagine the battle she was fighting alone, and that thought gnawed at me like a relentless beast that I need a break. I murmured, breaking the tension while trying to convince myself of the semblance of strength. "Can you both stay here for a moment?" I glanced at Sarah and my cousin, whose name escaped me in the haze of emotions swirling about. They nodded, their eyes understanding, and I took a moment to breathe deeply and gather the fragile shards of my courage. The hospital corridor stretched ahead, its fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on everything I had been trying to escape. I moved beyond the waiting area, seeking solace in the small garden they had tended outside, each step filled with hesitant hope. The fresh air slipped into my lungs as I stepped outside, and for a brief moment, the weight began to lift. I sat on a weathered bench, the wood warm from the sun, and closed my eyes, allowing the sounds of nature to wash over me like a balm. But just as quickly, images of my mother flooded my mind, the laughter shared, the stories told, the warmth of her embrace, and I felt the heaviness settle back, and I reached into my pocket, grasping the small locket I wore around my neck, a gift from her on my 16th birthday. I couldn't recall being so grateful for it until now. As I opened it, the tiny image of her smiling face within was a painful reminder of all that was precarious and all that was at stake. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes once more, but I didn't let them fall. "Not yet. Excuse me, are you all right?" A gentle voice intruded upon my solitude. I turned to see an older woman, her face familiar but clouded in the fog of grief. She bore an expression of quiet empathy, as if she understood the depths of sorrow without needing to inquire. "Emptying," I admitted, feeling some unseen weight gently loosen its grip. She smiled softly and took a seat beside me. "I know how helpless it can feel," she said, looking out into the garden. "My husband was here last year, suffering through something equally frightening. It's easy to feel alone amidst the noise of hospitals." Her words wrapped around my heart, resonating in a way that surprised me. The connection formed was gentle, a lifeline bridging the vast ocean of grief we often found ourselves lost within. "I'm sorry," I murmured, suddenly acutely aware of how comforting it was to share my pain without the incessant pressure of having to hide it. "That I lost him. But that doesn't mean I lost the love we shared," she said, her voice trembling. "He still lives through me, through our memories, and in those moments of joy we created together." The simplicity of her words started to weave a small tapestry of hope within me. It reminded me that even the harshest despair had fragments of beauty intertwined. Love didn't die. It transformed. "What did you do to cope?" I asked, my heart longing to grasp at every thread of relief and strength. "Allowing myself to feel every emotion without shame was the start," she replied, her eyes glistening under the soft sunlight. But I also embraced the kindness of others. You'd be surprised how support can come from the most unexpected places. In that quiet moment of vulnerability, I felt unmoored yet comforted. I knew there was strength to be drawn from sorrow, a well waiting to be tapped into, using the bonds of love to hold one another steady. As we chatted about our lives, a wistful light began to infiltrate the heavy darkness surrounding me. I thought of Sarah and Eli, how they had entwined themselves in my pain like vines soothing an aching tree. This woman, a stranger who had just entered my world, transformed the atmosphere and pushed back against the shadows. The power of shared stories and empathy is a force unto itself, growing stronger with every voice and every connection. But just as I began to feel the warmth seep deeper into my soul, the hospital door swung open, and panic surged in the pit of my stomach. Eli appeared, his face ashen and eyes wide with fear. "Emma," he shouted, rushing toward me with an urgency that caused my heart to race. "You need to come back. It's your mom. She's there taking her to surgery now." The words hung frozen in the air, their weight crushing. The tranquil moment shattered, replaced by a heady rush of dread. Grasping my locket, I stood. The warmth from the stranger vanished, swept away in the storm. Nothing felt stable. My heart raced as I locked eyes with Eli, the connection between us snapping taut like a thread pulled too far. Now? I barely processed the question as my chest constricted with fear. "They said they're afraid it's getting worse. We don't have time." And just as the dread settled over my thoughts like a shadow, the older woman squeezed my shoulder gently, a silent anchoring as I darted past her and back into the storm of emotion that awaited inside. The world felt overwhelming once more, full of uncertainty and unanswered questions, but I steeled myself against the rising tide. Hope swirled in me, barely a whisper, as I sprinted toward the door, holding onto the belief that love, even in its fragility, could still guide me through the chaos. The sterile corridor loomed before me, a labyrinth where every step echoed the muffled beeping of machines and the distant whispers of halting conversations. Eli was right at my side, his presence a steadying force even as panic swirled within me. "Emma, focus on your breath," he urged gently, his voice a grounding balm against the chaotic storm. I nodded, though I felt far from composed. Every heartbeat seemed to remind me of the weight of uncertainty. Following the frantic rush, we were led to the waiting room, a sterile space that felt suffocating in its familiarity. It smelled of antiseptic and despair, a cocktail twisted by oceans of tears already shed. I clutched the armrest of the chair, knuckles white, my locket cold against my chest, a tether to a past where love conflicted with grief. Sarah arrived moments later, her eyes scanning the room with fierce concern. "What's happening?" she asked breathlessly, slipping into the chair beside me, searching for strength in my gaze. I caught sight of tears pooling in the corners of her eyes, and every emotional crutch within me teetered under the strain. My voice cracked. "They're rushing her to surgery. They think the infection's spread." Sarah gasped, the sound a raw vulnerability that shattered the semblance of control I'd been clinging to. "No, I can't handle this. Not her. Not now." Eli immediately grasped her hand, an anchor in turbulent waters. But it felt like the room was closing in, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. I wanted to push open a window and breathe in hope, but it remained elusive, teasing at the fringes of my anguish. "Why don't we find something to focus on while we wait?" Eli suggested, though his voice quivered slightly. He turned to the small snack station tucked in the corner, gathering a few granola bars. It was a mundane act that felt absurd in the face of everything. But seeing him reach out for anything offered a flicker of normalcy. "What if I began?" But the words caught in my throat. As I watched him, I remembered the stranger in the garden and her kind gaze. Somehow, sharing pain had created a bond stronger than anything I'd anticipated. "Eli," I said slowly, I think we should open up a little. Talk about memories. About Mom. It might help." Sarah looked at me, still teetering on the brink of despair, but she nodded slightly. "Yeah, I need that. I need her." We began to share stories, voices overlapping as we recounted lighter moments with my mother. The time she botched a lasagna for our family gathering, turning it into a spontaneous joke fest that had us all in stitches, or how she had insisted on a ridiculous family theme for Halloween. clad us all in mismatched costumes that made us the talk of the neighborhood. Slowly, laughter mixed with the tears, creating a strange symphonic harmony that allowed us to reclaim fragments of our joy even amidst the sorrow. But just as the laughter began to wash over us like a soothing tide, an unnerving tension hung thick in the air, dragging down the buoyancy we had found. My father stepped in, his face hardened, eyes hollow with worry. "We just received an update," he said, voice quaking ever so slightly. "Things aren't looking good." I could barely breathe. The tightness in my throat constricted further, and images of my mother resurfaced, her laughter, the warmth of her hugs infusing the air with a gnawing sense of loss that threatened to engulf me. In that moment, uncertainty clawed at my heart, turning hope into a distant echo. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, each word laced with desperation. The doctors found something more serious than we initially believed. "It's affecting her organs, and they're trying their best. Just keep praying," he murmured, his gaze slipping to the ground. My walls began to crumble, the emotional barricade I had hurriedly erected fracturing under the weight of despair. I felt as though I were watching my life play out in agonizing slow motion, every breath a reminder of the ticking clock. Grief pulsed in my veins, a relentless surge that refused to relent. As my father's words sank in, Eli shifted forward, both empathy and resolve etched on his features. "Emma, we have to keep talking about her," he said, his steady gaze finding mine. "She's fighting. You need to recall every moment that brought you joy and let it fill you with strength." "It's what she would want." Before I could respond, Sarah reached over to clasp my hand, her fingers trembling yet firm. "We'll get through this together," she said softly, her sincerity cutting through my cloud of despair. Just as I began to find solace in these connections, the sterile door swung open again, and a nurse stepped in, eyes sweeping across our small gathering. "Emma Carter?" she called, a note of urgency gripping the air. "Yes," I managed to utter, rising to meet my fate with a heart pounding with dread. "The doctors would like to speak with you in the conference room." Her words hung heavy, saturated with the unsaid. My ears buzzed with the impending storm. As I followed her footsteps down the sterile corridor, a single thought consumed me: what kind of news awaited? The kind that built bridges of hope or walls of despair. I felt Sarah and Ellis' eyes on my back, their presence a tether to the world I was leaving behind. This was the moment that could shatter everything. A door loomed ahead, jagged with anticipation, and with every shaky breath, I steeled myself for the truth I desperately dreaded. Would I still have a mother on the other side? In the sterile glow of the conference room, the air was thick with the silence that crept in like a thief, stealing the last shreds of hope. My heart raced with every step I took, each beat a reminder of the magnitude of what hung in the balance. Ellis' presence faded behind me, retreating into the shadows of uncertainty where I could no longer reach him. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for whatever lay ahead. "Emma," the doctor said, his tone grave, making it clear that the weight of his next words was piled high with implications. I carefully folded my hands, fighting the urge to tremble. "Your mother's surgery was declared successful," but the word "but" hung in the air, suffocating the faint hope that had been rekindled during those shared stories. I felt time distort around me, each second morphing into eternity. My mind raced as I grasped the possibilities, a torrent of memories washing over me. Laughter, warmth, the joy of living, everything I could lose. "Her body is having difficulty recovering," he continued. "The infection has spread farther than we anticipated, and we need to discuss her next steps." Every word felt like a nail in my chest. I glanced toward the window, desperate for the sun to break through the clouds pressing upon me. "Next steps?" I asked, my voice wavering. "What does that mean?" He cleared his throat, a gesture that spoke of sorrowful inevitability. "We have options, but they come with risks. You need to understand how serious this is. I'm afraid your mother requires more than just medical attention. She needs her family to fight alongside her." A bizarre mix of anger and fear surged within me. I suddenly longed for a reality where choices didn't weigh so heavily on a family, where love alone could heal the unhealable. "Then we fight," I blurted out, confidence swelling inside me even as doubt clung to my heart like a stubborn shadow. "Whatever it takes, we will do it together." The doctor's nod held a hint of respect, yet uncertainty lingered behind his eyes. It drove deeper stakes into my resolve, igniting a fire fueled by love and desperation. I could picture my mother's face, framed by the warmth of countless family memories, her laughter cutting through the darkest moments as I returned to the waiting area, hands fidgeting with the locket against my chest. I found Eli and Sarah deep in hushed conversation. Their expressions shifted as I approached, the room filled with 1,000 questions we all hesitated to voice. What did they say? Eli asked, studying my face like a merging tide. It's serious, I admitted, my voice trembling, but they're giving us options. We need to be ready to fight for her together. Before they could respond, a distant commotion echoed through the halls, and I turned sharply. Nurses and doctors rushed past us, voices raised in urgency. My breath hitched as I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure, rushing between the waves me aunt, Sarah's sister, who had been distant all this time. I'm here, she called, pulling at the depths of my memories. Her face contorted in worry, but something in her demeanor evoked the strongest pull of recognition inside me. Emma, she cried out, a flicker of relief threading through her voice. With every step she took toward us, I felt something deep within me shift. Something that had remained unacknowledged, hidden in the corners of my heart, began to awaken. Go to her, Eli urged quietly, nudging me forward. This is family. She may know something that could help. As I moved closer, I watched the two sisters unite, the weight of the years apart colliding in a wave of vulnerability. Memories flooded back like photographs turning sepia, laughter in the summer sun, tears of joy shared, and against it all, the ache of loss steadfastly remained. We need to talk, I overheard my aunt say, her voice carrying warmth mixed with a sense of urgency. But before I could figure out my next steps, another nurse approached with a hesitant expression. Excuse me, but are you Emma? Yes, I replied, noting the apprehensive tones swirling around me again. Is everything all right? We've been trying to reach you. Your mother is asking for you. She's awake. And suddenly, the world felt like it was shifting back into focus, the air lightening, my heart soaring with renewed hope. I turned back to Eli and Sarah, who stood with equal parts excitement and trepidation. Let's go, I urged, drawing strength from their shared resolve. I stepped into my mother's room. Sunlight cascaded through the window, illuminating every corner like a divine embrace. The chaotic sounds faded into the background as I locked onto her fragile form lying there pale, yet undeniably alive. And there she was, the woman who had shown me how to truly love. Emma, she sighed, a smile attempting to break through her lethargy, and my heart melted, the walls I had built around myself splintering. Mom, I'm here, I'm not leaving you. I grasped her hand, pouring my hopes, fears, and love into the very touch as if I could bridge the chasm that had grown between us. Promise me something, she whispered, her voice cracking like fragile glass. Promise me that no matter what, you'll hold on to love. At that moment, I realized we were not just fighting against despair, we were pushing toward a future filled with love, gathered from every piece of family history that had shaped our lives. Always, I choked out through tears, squeezing her hand tighter. We'll fight together, every step of the way. As her eyes glistened like dew-kissed grass, pulling strength from me as I drew it from her, I knew we were capable of defying the odds. The rest of the world faded as we cradled our bond, surrounded by the tangled threads of family, who had shown me that love thrived even in the darkest shadows. In that moment, I realized healing would never be without struggle, but it was a battle worth every piece of our hearts. Mom, I whispered, and for the first authentic time, I felt the barriers I had built begin to dissolve, revealing the beautiful truth that had awaited beneath all along. Love will guide us, she said, her eyes never leaving mine, and I understood now that as long as we held one another close, no darkness could extinguish the light we had created. And then, as if the universe conspired to echo my realization, I turned my gaze to the window, feeling the hope surge within me like the soft stirring of dawn after a long, cold night. Well, find the strength, I vowed, soaking in the warmth of our shared light. As we stood together, bound by love and united in purpose, I understood. It wasn't just a fight we were fastened, it was a journey toward a new beginning woven with vibrant threads of connection, filled with the promise of love and resilience. The journey would be arduous and filled with uncertainty, but new, deep in my heart. We were ready to embrace it with open arms. In the face of everything that lay ahead, there was only one thing I could hold on to. No matter how dark the path might appear, love would always light the way, reminding us of what truly mattered. And with that conviction, I squeezed my mother's hand, the warmth more potent than ever as I whispered the final words that would carry us through this storm. Together, Mom. Always together.